Welcome to Brims Part 2, and I highly recommend you watch Brims Part 1 first. Right, in this section I'm going to show you how to draw a cardboard circular brim. Now first off, I'm going to mark an oval with a block that's the head size I want. Now there are lots of videos online to show you how to draw an oval if you don't have a head block. But if you don't have a head block, you're going to struggle with what to do with your brim. Now we need to mark the centre. So I measure across and 4 inches is the centre, so I just check that. Then I need to mark my seam allowance. So I'm doing 10 centimetres onto the inner of the oval shape and then join all those together. So there we have our head section and our centre point. Now you need to work out what size you want your brim to be. So if you want your brim to be 3 inches or 4 inches or whichever. So from the centre point, mark outwards. Once you've made a point that you can use with your compass, you need to go all the way around and cut out the, draw rather, the actual brim. So the brim is circular, but the crown section is oval. Now to cut out the middle section, it's easier to cut lots of triangles so that you can get your scissors in and cut round easier. So that's what I tend to do. So we need to cut out the outside, which you can see I've already done, and then cut out the centre. Now what I'm going to do is snip equidistant all the way around just into my seam allowance, because I want to open that out as an upstand for the brim. So cut all the way around just to the headline. Once you've done that, I then put the block back on and just score so that I can bend the cardboard easier. So I've bent all the upstand up. And to make it firm, what I'm doing is fitting it back on the head block and just putting some sellotape round to keep it in a firm shape. Once it's off, and I've made sure that's all firm all the way around, I'm then going to cover the whole of the brim in sellotape so that it will also make it firmer even still. But first off, I'm going to mark the quarters and the 45-degree angles, and I'm going to cut up just to the headline. This is so that I can make this brim curve down. Then what I'm going to do is mark so that each one's going to be equal. I'm going to mark 10 centimetres next to each cut. Then I'm going to fold them over to that mark line and sellotape down. Once I've sellotaped all those cuts down, now the more cuts you make, the more the brim will go downwards. So be careful, don't go mad. Now I've covered the whole thing in sellotape. Took me a while to do, so I haven't bothered videoing that. And I'm going to attempt to now block some sinamay on it. So I'm using 2 layers of sinamay, and I'm going to use clips to keep it on the cardboard. So you can see what I've done is I've cut some of the centre out so that I can cut some slits and just fold it over my upstand. Well, I have to say I'm quite pleased with blocking some sinamay on my cardboard brim. Hasn't come out too bad at all. Quite pleased with that. What I did was when I took it off the cardboard, I pressed this with an iron, round it like that. And then I put that over a block so that I could just press the upstand, although that needs trimming more. But I can make a crown and I will have quite a nice hat. And And I realised if the cardboard was a lot stiffer, I wouldn't have ended up with these slight creases in it. But I didn't have any stiffer cardboard. But there we are. You can experiment. So I'm quite pleased with that. Now we're going to move on to flat pattern brims again. Ooh. Now, as in my previous video, which was sort of part one of this collation, I showed how to make a brim with a back join and also a side join. And what I've got here is one that I've made with a side join. And I've decided what I want to do on the side of this hat is to have a pleated effect. Now that means I will have to extend this, otherwise I won't have enough fabric for pleating. So I'm going to take a piece of scrap, brown paper. Now I've got to work out how much I want to pleat it. So that's best to work out in advance. So if you want one pleat or 2 pleats, so, or 3 pleats. I mean, the good thing about cutting out fabric is if I've made it too long and I don't like 3 pleats, I can take that out. But it gives me an indication of how much I need to extend it by, which is quite a lot. So there's my piece of paper. And I'm going to take that on, like so. Now, of course, I need to cut this and cut this. And what I'm going to do is cut it again in a curve. But I'm just doing it by eye, like that. So I've got that extended. So now I'm going to cut that out and see how it works. So what hopefully will happen is at the side here, I will have all of this pleated. So I'm going to cut it out in fabric now. So it didn't turn out too bad. I will adjust it, but I just thought I'd show you. And also my brim that I blocked on the cardboard didn't turn out too bad either. Right, now we're going to talk about cap brims, you know, the type of brim that's on a baseball cap or whatever. And the easiest way to cut one out is to use some plates. Now, what I'm doing is I'm using a small plate here just to demonstrate. You do not want to use half the plate. That brim would be too half circle, obviously. You want a more oblique shape. So I've marked about 1/3 on this saucer. And, oh, didn't do that very well because there's a bumpy bit there. And now what I'm going to do is I need the shape here. But I'm going to use a slightly bigger plate, so I have more of a curve. Now we don't want to join it up at the ends because we need some seam allowance. So we're going to do it here. Now we want to do a straight line there and a straight line there. Now this, from this point, you've got to measure this, but I'm just doing it roughly, to this point is your seam allowance for attaching. And this point to this point is your seam allowance for sewing it together. Now, as you can see, this makes a small peak, but that's because I just wanted to show you what to do. The bigger the plate, the bigger the peak. Okay, so we could use this one. And again, you don't want half, you want about 1/3. And also what you can do is you can make your seam allowance on the outside edge. So you could do it from here. I haven't done this very well because I haven't measured it out for you. But it was just to show you. Ah, look at that. Look at that narrow edge there. That's not good, is it? But you get the drift. You can measure it out properly. And so then we have a slightly bigger brim. And then when you've cut them out, you can see the brim shape. I did cut one out earlier, I think, just to show you. Hang on a second. Yeah. So we've got a small brim there, and we've got a bigger brim there. The more you alter the shape of the curve, the more the brim will either stand up or go down. Now, of course, you don't have to make it that shape. You can make a peak brim with a square if you want something a bit different. So, and have it like that. Anyway, just another tip if you're needing to cut a brim for something. And don't forget, when you're cutting the brim, you do need your edges to overlap at that top, those top corners where your seam allowances are, where I've put the arrow. I didn't really draw it very well before, and I thought, oh, you'll be wondering what's going on. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been a bit interesting. As with all my videos, it's a bit ad hoc. There you are. Have fun, folks. Cheers. Bye.